our praxis textbook, and it goes into studying where the term rhetoric came from, its beginnings. So we'll look at some ancient philosophers like Aristotle. This is a quote from Aristotle: "The faculty of discovering in a given instance the available means of persuasion," describing what is the art of rhetoric. So this painting here was created by Raphael, is entitled The School of Athens, and it shows Plato, Aristotle, and other famous philosophers engaging in philosophical inquiry at a school called the Ancient Agora of Athens, and it was an academic meeting place for great philosophers. Uh, Rhetoric looks at the structure of an argument, which is going to include, just like an essay that you write, an introduction that has your thesis, which is your main claim or argument that's the focus of your entire essay or speech or any rhetorical argument you're putting together. It should also include supporting evidence. It should address counter arguments or other thoughts on the topic, and should include a conclusion. So the ancient Greeks held public government discussions. People gathered together for public discussion, and so philosophers like Aristotle and Plato, Plato was Aristotle's teacher, came up with structured arguments that would be most persuasive in these public gatherings. There weren't attorneys or professional politicians at that time. Issues were just debated in public. And then a fun fact is that Aristotle also taught Alexander the Great how to properly argue and perform a public speech. So when it comes to politics, people often say things like, "Oh, that's just empty rhetoric," and in today's politics, oftentimes it is. But in theory, it should be a persuasive argument that utilizes these different tools and structures that should show listeners or readers the viability of the argument. It should address all parts of it and be persuasive. In academics, rhetoric is the study of persuasive communication, argument. So all of the essays and the work that we'll be doing over the course of the semester will be persuasive or argumentative, the types of essays. Now there are different ways of structuring persuasive essays, but they'll all be argumentative. And then of course rhetoric can be both oratory and written. So Aristotle is quoted as saying, "The faculty of discovery, in a given instance, the available means of persuasion." So what he's saying there is that the means of utilizing the means of persuasion in any given situation. So I'm sure you already have some idea what an argument is, but a more formal definition of an argument, the common definition is disagreement. But in a rhetorical argument, it's a carefully crafted presentation or viewpoint or position with credible thoughts and opinions, along with the reasons for their support. A common error is stringing together a series of thoughts and opinions without the support. And the support we'll go into great detail talking about different types of support and common logical fallacies. But the type of support needs to be valid to support any opinion and should be explained in great detail. We will talk about these elements of persuasion, which I'm sure you've heard of in the past. We'll go into great detail. Ethos, which is convincing by means of character or credibility. So you see this in advertising when, like in the top left-hand corner there, maybe you see a commercial for a pharmaceutical or a dental product, and you see a dentist or a doctor or somebody else wearing a lab coat, which is a paid actor, but but they lend credibility to the product because it seems as though experts are endorsing them. We also see this with athletes and performers and that kind of thing, lending their names to products, and that lends credibility or ethos to the product as well. Pathos is convincing by playing upon emotions. I'm sure we've all heard the sad Sarah McLachlan commercials for adopting stray animals and that kind of thing. So on the right-hand side, we see the poor puppy that's getting water that was rescued. And what that does is it convinces by, playing upon your emotions. Logos is convincing by use of reason and evidence. And while all of these can be very convincing for your essays, the research you'll be doing, logos is the one that I would hope to see the most of. This is where we see the statistics and studies and that kind of thing that can be used to support your reasoning. And then lastly, Kairos is convincing through the opportune moment. So on the bottom right, there's a picture of people that are out talking about gun control, and the discussion. We saw this with a lot of politicians. Came about right after the Sandy Hook shooting, and so politicians and others who feel strongly about this topic use that time, that moment, to open up the discussion. We also saw this after 9/11. So it can be a very convincing tool to utilize as well. We will also be looking at visual rhetoric. So we can look at advertisements, cartoons, televisions, films, documentaries, that kind of thing, as a means of visual persuasion, which utilizes ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos as well. And in many similar ways to writing, you just have to read the visual image to find those. So we see, oh, there's an example with Brooke Shields down there in the Colgate of, a familiar face lending ethos to the product of Colgate toothpaste. And then pathos over there on the right, the former smoker who has the hole in her throat now, from an advertisement from the CDC in order to convince people to quit smoking or not to start in the first place.